um, day 9 from surgery. I'm sorry I'm putting on like I'm smart look. I don't think it really fits me, but it's crazy. After my first surgery, I went in with 15/20 vision and I came out not being able to see things close up. I guess it's all the drugs. And of course, on my previous vlogs, you've heard me talk about the morphine withdrawal, which I would describe as hell. But today I wanted to talk to you guys about something I experienced coming home from the hospital. It's kind of weird. A lot of you guys don't know that, my faith is Christianity, and but that means something different to me than at most that I talk to, and my brothers and sisters in Christ out there, and then others who I've had connections with, even outside of that. I know God's children are God's children, and I never judge anybody, because I know that God may have, some are called early, some are called late. I know when I was called, I couldn't deny it. I did the first. I said, after my brother-in-law died in my arms, when I was 17 years old, it really kind of messed me up mentally. And, I heard the first time in my life, it's like everything was pushing me to be born again. Like random people would come up to me and say, I know that Christ is calling you. I know that Christ is calling you. But I made a deal, at least in my mind, I made a deal with God. I said, no, not right now. I want to have a little fun in life. I'm about to graduate high school, and I went through this dramatic event, and it was almost as, it just disappeared and stopped happening. But, that changed probably when I was, probably about 4 years later, maybe. I had started a small business painting contracting when I think I was 19 or 20 years old, after I worked with my uncle, John, for a couple of years. And same thing started happening, where just these random events of people saying, they call me. I had a job listing one time, and I get a call for a job, and the guy's like, you know what? I do need the job, but listen, I feel this strong pull that I need to tell you that God's calling you, So this happened several times, but life was good for me at that point, because the business was going pretty good. Yeah, I met a girl that, I thought maybe I was going to marry. And we headed up, her dad was up in Youngstown, Ohio. And we went to Youngstown, Ohio in an airplane, met him, everything went great. I kind of scoping the family situation out. And, I had some plans maybe to, tie the knot. And so we got back on an airplane to come back home to Jacksonville, Florida, December 31st, 1995. So I would have been 22 years old. So the timeline's right on time. And it was a blizzard situation, so we sat on the airport, the tarmac for a while. And we finally got up, took off, and got at cruising altitude, and the pilot came over with the cruising altitude speech, the basic, you're free to move around the cabin speech. And all of a sudden, we lost an engine, which is fine, but there's my beautiful wife. It's fine in a 737 jet, and that's what it was, and it could fly with one engine, but they couldn't get it turned off. And the danger to that is, since then I've learned about all the airplane engine what causes an engine to do that and turn off. And there's been some crashes because of the same situation, running through hell, or running through, having pigeons or something go, whatever it was, coming through the air, the input of the jet. But so they couldn't get it turned off, and then the trouble is that gas is still going to it. So sure enough, we were sitting on that wing where all of a sudden it caught a fire. And this girl, she said, everybody's kind of freaking out. And she turns to me and says, well, what do we do? And I said, well, why don't we, I had a little track a guy gave me. And I don't think too much about that stuff, but man, everything, even the rocks can talk to you when God's calling you. So it had been that way. And I just remember, for whatever reason, I put it in my wallet. I said, well, let's take this out and say this prayer, and hold hands basically. And so we did, and we did that, and it seemed to calm her down a little bit. And so finally we landed at a flattened out mountaintop airport in West Virginia. And pilot did a good job getting us down, but it was kind of a hairy situation. But basically that was my burning bush moment. And when I felt that I was, I answered, said, Lord, I'm ready to do this, So that started, the typical religious indoctrination of, okay, now you got to go save everybody else. But here I am reading the gospel like every single day, like the red letter gospels. And it was so conflicting in my spirit to what I was being told, because I was going to this church every day. I'm sorry, not every day, but like a Wednesday and Sunday type of thing, And on the other days I would do studies, because I never did a Bible study at that point. And I would also go to the library and read about certain things. I was finding out all kind of information. I wanted to know what was going on in that time, and how secular historians saw it, and then how that contrasted with like the biblical history, because I know even seculars, they use biblical, they look at the biblical or the Bible as a history of antiquities. And so it's kind of interesting. I watched something recently. It's called The Great Courses. It's basically a secular type of program piece, but it's interesting in the fact that the way somebody doesn't see it from a spiritual standpoint. They see it just like comparing these, and it's somebody that's truly not going, okay, this one's flawed because of this, and this one's flawed because of that. They're just comparing and contrasting. And it's really in depth. If you go on the Great Courses, it's how the antiquities of the Jews influenced Jesus. And so it's a pretty good course. It's, it's like 18, 19 videos, but it's pretty fantastic. But anyway, getting back to that, I did all the studies, and there was a lot of contrasting from what I was being told compared to what my spirit was feeling when I was reading. I was being told to go make, disciples. But what stuck, and what I think I really got when I truly gave my heart, and I was ready to give it and kind of give up that sovereignty of me to kind of accept the spirit, from going from a fleshly decision maker to learning how to be a spirit-driven decision maker. And this is like the most hard thing I think of the gospel. I think it's brilliant. That's why I love the gospel. I think it is truly a brilliant piece of work. Besides its sacrifice and all that stuff. When he says, you go to the gate, and the gatekeeper doesn't let you in, and they don't go in either. And then also I kind of looked at the when he said, take the log out of your own eyes before you take the speck out of your brother's eyes. And so I was having trouble with that, because everything that I was being told by the the ministers is like, okay, brother, you're saved. You got to go out and save everybody. And I'm a mess. And it's like I'm good at debating people on subjects I know. I mean, people were tearing me up, and just it's easy to break down the gospel when you don't know it well, and from somebody just laughing at you basically and mocking you. Now thinking back, I don't care about that, but I was a 22-year-old insecure kid that had a lot of personal things to work out on and to work out, and some big walls to overcome that had basically come from my childhood of, mom not being around. Went through some, emotional healings from, and understanding that, like, my mom was a gypsy and she wasn't there, but just I was provided a mom by my dad's third wife, Lonnie D. She's like an angel. She was only 9 years older or 10 years older than us. She come in and solidified her family. So I was taking all these things and I was being healed, and it was a process. And with me, that process wasn't an easy one. Nowadays I talk about being, if you hear me talk, I get excited about the gospel because I think it's perfect from even a teaching standpoint. Not getting to the actual spiritual attribute and truths about it, like blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. That's a spiritual attribute that is past the actual kind of working on yourself and understanding that and what that meant, how I had to bring myself down to, being this person that was doing really good, had everything going on in life. And oh, by the way, that relationship, I told her this is the way I was going to live and this is what I want to do. And she's like, I ain't with that program. So that was basically it. And I cut the ties. And I say I cut the ties, but how that as a 22-year-old kid in a great relationship, I've just now come into this Christianity, and things are confusing on that end. And now, I have this big conviction now. All of a sudden I had these big convictions in my life. I call it the Spirit just leading me out of some things. And so I was fighting many fronts. But shortly after that, when I made that decision and all that got cut, here I am alone in my world. And it was crazy because all of a sudden went from working every day. If anybody knows me, I'm a worker bee in my business. I've worked 18 hours a day. Basically, what led up to this probably is too much. We had 3 businesses. I was doing a hauling business, which was booming. I just started back in 2018. My real estate business, I was making an album, which you're going to hear the story and you're going to hear how that all come around to being 46 years old, getting money to make an album with a gospel star named Uncle Reese. How this full thing kind of goes around to being, so everything was going good, to being to this kid that basically didn't have any money. His life was being broken down. I was getting over, trying to deal with the heartbreak of not having this girl that was very close. We were very close and we had a good relationship. And let God basically deal with me. Meantime, I'm sitting there fighting, ministers saying, you won't give in to authority. And I'm reading the gospel and I'm thinking, thank God that Jesus didn't give in to the authority of the Pharisees and Sadducees, or, religious doctrine, that the Spirit is what was guiding me. And so I'm going to leave that with this video, and then we'll continue on with the story. Take care. Nothing but love.